everybody. It's nice to see you all. It's hard to believe that time is going by so quickly, and it's time for us to start making efforts towards achieving a settled minister. And in this and many endeavors that we have done at Live Oak, it's wonderful to be part of a larger organization with a lot of competence and history in dealing with some of these things. So we're very pleased that Ken Collier is here with us today, and this is really the kickoff of our search for a settled minister. Ken's going to be meeting with the board tomorrow night, and then you can expect to see a lot of action happening in this area. So thank you for your interest on this beautiful summer day, and I'll turn it over to Ken.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm glad to be here with y'all. My official title, got to get all the jargon right, and in the settlement process, there's a lot of jargon. So my official title is the Ministerial Settlement Representative, or MSR. I was nominated for the position by Ken Brown, our district executive, and appointed to the position by Keith Cron, who is the head of the transitions department at the I guess I can still say 25 Deegan Street because I haven't moved to that, but that's happening.
Talking about change.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to be 24 instead of 25, but a different street. Anyhow, that's a whole other story. I hope you don't mind if I sit. I sprained my ankle about a week ago, and I'd rather have it dangle than stand on it. So, my job is to assist congregations in finding the best choice of minister that we can manage to come by. Most of the services that I provide are paid for by the association. That's why you pay your fair share in UUA dues to get these kinds of services back again. I'm given an honorarium for the work that I do. My travel expenses are reimbursed. The only cost to you will be the service I just did, and if I lead the retreat for your search committee. Other than that, everything is paid for by the UUA. My role is to coach, to guide, and to consult. There's semi-annual trainings that I take part in. I'm always available to the board president and the search committee by email, by telephone. Given that I live in Santa Barbara, come knock on my door. You know, it's kind of nice to be close by. Stop me in the gym.
Take you out to coffee?
Take me out to coffee. Whatever. Hungry Cat is a nice place. So people sometimes ask, why does anyone want to be an MSR? It's a lot of work, a lot of travel. Why would you want to do that? Well, the reason I want to do that is that I've seen far too often the results of a poorly conceived and poorly executed search happen. You know, one of the things that I've done in my ministry is go to churches that have had really, really horrendous breaking up of ministries. I've seen a whole hell of a lot worse than that. Believe me. Yours was mild compared to some of the stuff that I've seen. And it breaks my heart to see churches have to go through that. So I want to help you make the best choice you can. That said, of course, there are absolutely no guarantees that you'll make the right choice. There aren't guarantees in life. But what you can do is raise the odds as much as possible. And that's what this whole search process is about. You are, of course, free to follow whatever process you want. That's part of congregational polity. We can't drag you kicking and screaming into the UUA search process. However, we can advise you of what some of the consequences of not following the process might be. One of those consequences is that you will vastly reduce the number of possible ministers. The UU Ministers Association has what we call the Code of Professional Conduct, Code of Professional Conduct, that we all subscribe to, most of us. Anyone who is a member subscribes to it. That's the vast majority of ministers. One of the points in that is that we agreed to follow the UUA settlement process. And that's part of the Code of Professional Conduct for very good reason. Because we do not want ministers beating up on each other and bad-mouthing each other and going into all that kind of conflict within our ministry. That's a very bad idea. So we agreed to follow this process. It is also the case that this process is the one that has evolved over years and years and years of experience. It is always being refined. You'll probably notice, those of you who are around the last time you went through a settlement search, you'll notice some differences. It's always being refined as someone has a good idea and we try to incorporate it, or we realize we've been doing it this way and, we can do better than that. So it's always being refined. But this is what's evolved, and we believe that this is the best we can come up with, which is not to say it's the best ever. It's not cheap. You could spend less time and less money, but the chances of having a good settlement drop when you start scrimping and cutting corners and trying to save on this and that, when you really need to take your time and spend the money that's necessary. So there are several steps. I want to run you through the steps so you have an idea of what's going to happen in the year to come. The process will take from now until a year from now. By a year from now, if everything goes according to schedule, you will have a candidate and you'll be all excited about the candidacy. The first step is this meeting. So we're into step one. The next step will be the congregation and the board will need to hold some meetings to approve the financing of the search. As they say, it's not cheap. You should assume the budget for a good search will range somewhere in the neighborhood of $8,000 to $10,000. The kind of guideline that's used is $10,000 or 20% of your salary plus housing that you're going to be offering the new minister, whichever is the larger figure. You need to have that set aside because, for example, probably the biggest expense is moving the new minister here. That new minister coming from Davis wasn't all that big a deal. But if you find the one true minister for your church is currently living in East Oshkosh, Wisconsin, that's a whole nother ballgame. So you have to have that money ready to go. Yes?
Can you answer questions now, or do you want to wait until?
Sure.
What's this $8,000 to $10,000, what is it spent on?
This money will be spent on, as I say, moving. It'll be spent on bringing in place what they call pre-candidates for an in-depth weekend-long interview. There will be 3 to 5 of them typically. Reproduction, other travel expenses, postage, this and that and the other. The search committee will have a retreat, and the retreat should not be on site, so you'll have to pay for that. It's those kinds of things.
Does it include the week, candidating week?
Oh, that's that as well. It includes the candidating week, so you'll bring the new minister and his or her family here for a week. So it's not an inexpensive process. Search Committee. The quality of the search is a direct product of the people who are on the committee. Some of you have been involved in the Church Search Committee, some of you have been involved in search committees in your business. So if you have, you understand that. So what you need to do is to begin to think really, really carefully about who you want to be on your search committee. I haven't looked at your bylaws, so I'm not sure whether your bylaws specify how to form a search committee or not. Some churches do and some don't. But what you want to have someone on the search committee is someone who is well respected all across the congregation. You want someone who is able to understand the entire church and to understand that, well, my bailiwick, the thing that moves me about the church is this. This is not the church. The church is this piece and that piece and that piece and that piece. And I have to represent all of those pieces. So you don't want someone who thinks that, for example, social justice is what the church is all about, period. The rest are just what we have to put up with to do social justice. Or religious education or whatever it may be. This is also not the time to try to make a disaffected member feel good, because that disaffected member will bring that disaffection into the search committee. What you want to do is to have anywhere, no less than 5, no more than 7 people on the search committee. 5 people is getting to the small end because of the amount of work that's necessary to spread over these people. And if you get larger than 7, it starts getting unwieldy. And it gets a little bit harder to maintain the appropriate level of confidentiality and whatnot. So 5 to 7 people is what you're looking for. Serving on the search committee is a really rewarding task. People on the search committees typically get deeply bonded to each other. They become very good friends. At the same time, it should be noted that it is a lot of work and takes a lot of time. You should assume, if you're thinking about being on the search committee, you should assume that you will be putting in over the next year anywhere between 200 and 500 hours, somewhere in that ballpark. That's a lot of time. At some point, the committee will be meeting at least weekly, sometimes more often. Whole weekends will be given over to it, not just during the interviewing process, but also when you're creating your packet and things like that. So you need to ask yourself, do I have the time and stamina to do that? Am I willing to give up that much time? I forgot to mention something, excuse me. Some of the resources, the main resource, the Bible for settlement, is called the Settlement Handbook. And you can find it online at uua.org/transitions. And search around in the page, it'll come up. And if you're really interested and want to read in gory detail everything there is to know about the UU search process, that's the thing to look at. And anyone can read that. It's open to anyone. There's no restrictions. So if you really are getting serious and you think, yeah, I would kind of like to be on that search committee, take a look at that so you really understand what you're getting yourself in for. So the search committee gets formed. The next step is the search committee.
And it didn't seem to work very well for us last time.
Well, that's why I've said several times, there are no guarantees.
Right.
I will not guarantee this process will make a successful settlement. Can't do it. I will say that it raises the odds, nowhere near to 1, but it raises the odds. And that's the most you can hope for, no matter what process you have. There are always places where things can fall down, always, no matter what. Yes, ma'am.
You know, you were talking about trying to tried really hard to find out things. And it's my understanding that after we had so many problems, we discovered that there were problems in previous congregations with Erica that we were not told about and were not able to find out about. There's a certain amount of dishonesty. It makes us, I think, a little leery about how much really good information we are going to be given because we weren't. And how do we overcome this? How do we work with this? Has there been enough change so that that won't happen again?
Well, again, there's no guarantee. That you get references. You call, of course, the person giving you the reference, the prospective minister, is going to give people who are going to be calling. So you ask them, who else should I talk to? And you ask them, who else should I talk to? And you ask them, who else should I talk to? And I mean, you can overdig too, but you have to depend on the people at the other end of the phone
Yeah,
line
you do.
speaking honestly, and that's always true. And some people won't. That's the problem with references. They'll say something that they don't really think, or they'll gloss over something, or they'll paint with two. That's the problem with references. How can you find out more? There probably isn't any way. I imagine the search committee could call up the DE, but we're starting to get at what level do you want to embody distrust? I mean, that's kind of what you're talking about. Yes, Lars?
Well, I would say two things. One, just drawing a parallel to corporate employment practices and codes of HR reps, that often a termination agreement has a non-derogation clause saying we're not going to talk bad about each other, and that could get in the way of getting the information that you're talking about. The other thing is that I really do believe the UUA is a good benevolent bureaucracy, and being benevolent means you try to give some benefit of the doubt. So if somebody gets in trouble once, you might put a gloss on it so that that doesn't poison a career forever. If it happens twice, maybe that becomes a learning experience, and the response you get for the same query after that is different. I like to believe that the organizational structure is smart enough to learn that way.
And it's also true that ministers who have had a negotiated resignation, which is, again, some jargon, but like here, are required to go through a process to deal with that. Whether, I doubt if you would ever have access to what happened between, I mean, that's a confidentiality thing. But before they can go back and search, they're now required to go through a process of dealing with it. So, yes, Jerry.
Well, I was thinking maybe what we need to do when we call for references is change the question. And rather than say, okay, Mary, thank you for your information, who else should I talk to? Say, can you think of somebody in the congregation that might be able to give a balanced view and might have had an issue with this person that we could talk to? So that you actually dig for, I don't know if that would help any, but no, dig for information.
Well,
Information that wouldn't just be the glossy, hey, you're my best friend, so I'm gonna say good things. But somebody who actually had gone through an issue, it doesn't have to be evil and mean, it's just.
I always, I also serve on the regional subcommittee on candidacy. So I meet with prospective ministers, seminarians. And the packet they send us always has references. And when I call references, I always ask, what are this person's strengths? What are their weaknesses? You should always ask for both sides of that. And this is not a matter of give me the dirt. It's rather, nobody's perfect. Nobody does it all well. It's too big a job. So what does this person do well? What does this person do not so well? And know that. I mean, that's absolutely appropriate, I think.
Well, we
Now,
can-
again, go ahead.
As I said, we can even ask the ministerial candidate and say, could you, in your references, give us somebody who maybe you did have an issue with, it might have been resolved, but just ask them up front. And if they're worth their salt, it isn't like you wanna know who you're gonna take or not take, but it's like saying, okay, if we know ourselves as a congregation really well, we know what our strengths are, and we know what we can do, and we know what our holes are. So we need to match up with a minister, so this is maybe their weakness, but hey, that's okay, because we know we can take care of that.
Yeah.
So it's trying to find matches, not up and
Right.
down.
A good ministerial packet will have some of that information. If I recall, well, I said earlier that you will be working out a congregational record. The ministers will work out a comparable document, a ministerial record. And as I recall, it's been quite a while since I've done one of them, but if I recall, it asks at some point to describe a situation you feel you handled badly and how was it resolved. And that's on there. And the search committee will read that stuff. Yes, and then somebody over here, I don't remember. Yes, yes.
Briefly, we were talking about looking back into, now we have access through email and Facebook and whatever, we have more access about the life of a minister in a particular congregation. But if you were to look at the Live Oak record and how we have dealt with the situation about Erica, I don't think it is reflected in any negative way in any of our minutes. So if someone were to look at our records, they would not particularly see a big problem with what happened in the Erica situation. And I think that's why it will be so important to be upfront and in a, hopefully in a loving way, talk about how the situation has arisen and how we are dealing with it, because it is not reflected in our minutes. It is not reflected in our board minutes, it's not reflected in our annual report. And I think it was done out of kindness and out of concern, not to establish a bad reputation, but somebody else would look at our record to hire Erica, for example, they would not find any negative.
But I don't think they're looking at records, I mean, we didn't.
Well,
look
even
at
newsletters, even
Get
newsletters
that
wouldn't
news,
reflect
in our
it.
if you could have told, if you had seen that, the series that came up later, it was like, oh my gosh, those must have been our newsletters. It was exactly what had happened, and so people in the congregation must have been aware of it. Nobody, I don't see how you could go to that church and not be, since it was all over their newsletter.
Yeah, but it is not in, what my point
Yeah.
being is that we have to be aware that, like for
Oh, with
us,
us,
it is not
exactly.
in our records.
And it's not in our newsletters.
It
Yeah,
is not in our
right.
newsletter. So it'll
We
be
should
doubly
have-
important to address the issue directly.
Yes.
And that's why these interviews are so important. So you sit, the candidate or pre-candidate meets with the search committee and you explore each other. I mean, in some ways, it's like courting.
Speed dating.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah, it is speed dating.
And, yeah, Lily,
Well-
you had a question.
It's kind of related to what Marie was saying, but when we present our congregational packet, then is there a part in there where we tell about our weaknesses and?
Now, I have to admit, I cannot remember well enough what the congregational record sheet looks like. If it's not, see if you can figure out a way to get it in, to talk about some of that.
Yeah,
Thomas?
it does do
Good.
that. You should definitely do that,
Mhm.
yes.
Good.
But the fact is,
I think, okay, go ahead.
the fact is, people love to give good references,
Mhm.
and they hate to give bad references. And they will cover up their bad reference as best they can. And faint praise is one way to do it. Another way to do it is to not talk about the bad part, but talk about, I mean, if somebody asked us about Erica, we could, I think almost everybody, probably everybody in congregation, she gives wonderful sermons. She is very telling. And, I mean, you could work up a really good recommendation without having to say, but people don't like giving you bad things. One thing is that legally, it is well known that people get sued for giving bad references. I mean, can you prove that in a court of law, what you said about me? You know, so they don't like to do that.
Well, that's,
So you really have to work deeply and recognize how people who are being asked are doing. They're probably doing this gratuitously, for nothing. And they don't like to go too far out on it.
well, that's why you have to couch the question carefully and think your way
Yeah.
through. Not, what are they, how are they bad, but what are their weaknesses?
Yes. Right.
Or what is a situation in which
Growing edges.
they didn't handle it as well as they might, and how was it resolved? Things like that will get to some of that. Yes, sir.
It seems to me that the UUA has an important information filtering job to do. I would hope, certainly UUA is well aware of our experience with Reverend Erica. And I would feel very bad if that information does not get accurately transmitted to any future potential congregations that are, and that they would not do the cherry picking and just say, oh, she's wonderful sermons and great singing voice and musical talents and all of this, that they would be honest. That, to me, that's their UUA's fiduciary responsibility to the congregations that they serve.
That's true, and at the same time, they're aware of whatever work Erica has done to deal with her input to the problem, and they have to balance those two together for the sake of her career.
It seems to me that the congregation should get both pieces. Okay, here's some problems that Reverend Erica had with LIGO, but here's what she has done to work on those issues. And then the new potential new congregation has a way of saying, okay, well, that looks reasonable, but not just give cherry picking.
Well, and there are limits, there are also limits to UUA's resources and what they're able to do. The UUA, for example, I will not ever recommend a minister or even comment on a potential candidate. That's not my job. And even at the UUA, they tend not to do that. They help congregations ferret that information out the best way, in the best possible way, because they're often not in a particularly good position to do it either.
So it sounds like no one is in a good position
The
to
best-
say anything negative about
The best
previous
person,
minister.
the best person is the district executive at the time. Because the district executive is the person who has done the work with that congregation getting through the immediate crisis. So that's why I say, call the district executive about someone.
One more quick follow-up on that. It seems to me that the congregation has a strong obligation to make it clear to potential ministerial candidates what we're looking for. For example, to me, the biggest problem was style, not sermon quality or anything like that, but it was style. And my feeling is that Erica's approach was, I'm coming there to be the shepherd. You are like my sheep, and I am the shepherd, and I am going to tell you what to do. Or the CEO kind of image. I am coming there, you've hired a boss. And that was very distasteful to me.
Well, one of the ways you can deal with that, ferret some of that out, is to ask your pre-candidates, what is your view of ministry? What is the relationship between a minister and a congregation? And you can do
Maybe
something.
even on.
Yes, sir.
On the other hand, somewhere in this package that we're going to be preparing for the candidates, we have to also add all the good things that Erica did when she was here. And, and all the not good things that she did as well. So, I mean, when we do that, then that's gonna present, I think, our version of the good and the bad.
And remember, keep in mind, I understand the feelings are still raw about that. The healing is in process, it isn't done with. I understand that perfectly well. And remember, the search is not about Erica. The search is about your future. It's not, the healing is different from your search. And it's not as if the situation with Erica is irrelevant, but that's not what the search is about. Keep that in mind. I mean, and that'll be hard sometimes, but keep that in mind. You're not trying to fix what went wrong. You're trying to ensure your future. Yes.
You know, the other thing we have to think about is that although we think we're a great congregation, I know they are. And Santa Barbara is a wonderful place, but it's also a very expensive place to live. And not every minister can afford to live here. And we have to realize that what we want is limited by what a minister needs. So it's a two-way street.
And that's also something you probably want to keep in mind as you're doing budgeting. Something I didn't say about budgeting is most searches, what is your fiscal year? June to June. Some of that expense can be spread out over 2 fiscal years. Probably the biggest single one is the move, and that'll be in the 2nd fiscal year. So you can plan that way. But something to think about as you're planning, budgeting, bringing a new minister is exactly that. How do we help this person find housing?
It's a biggie.
It is. It does limit you. Someone with a $100,000 debt is not likely to be interested in trying to find a place to live in this area. And there are some seminarians coming out that will have debt in that order of magnitude when they add undergraduate and seminary together. And it does happen. Well, we have been going for over an hour. It's almost 5 minutes to 1. And people are drifting away. So I thank you very much. This is an important conversation. I'm available for counsel at any time.
Was there more that you had?
Oh, bits and pieces. I think the stuff we covered was really the really important stuff. One of the things that very quickly became apparent is your worry about falling into a trap. And I think it's important that we talked about that. And I'm sure that'll come up tomorrow night as well. But again, it's not about the past, it's about the future. Keep that.
You know what they say, once bitten, twice shy.
Yep, I understand that. Been bit myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's what I was asking, yeah, I thought I